So people that live in less westernized worlds have a cleaner diet, a better microbiome. They may not have the same composition of foods, like there's more food scarcity, but overall they don't have the toxin burden, generally speaking, that we do. And they also have a society that cultivates community and cultivates relaxation. Like the other part of it is our stress chemistry, which I think is a huge player as to why we see such hormonal imbalances, particularly in women. So let's get into that mitochondrial piece, because this is some of the stuff that when I started digging, I'm like, oh wow. This might be what's going on. And for me, this correcting these problems allowed me to lose over 30 pounds without like heroic efforts and keep it off. So inside our powerhouse, we went through a bunch of metabolic changes and genetic changes at the last ice age. So when we went from looking like an ape to a human, right? So something like that. And there were some genetic changes that allowed us to transition from basically not being able to store fat to store fat. And there were two major enzymes. One's called uricase and the other one's called fructokinase. And it essentially allowed animals to, us as sort of ape-like creatures, to eat, number one, bananas that were fermenting and things like that. Fruit that were fermenting, because at that point we were not omnivores. And it also allowed us to put on body fat for the first time. And that was the fructokinase enzyme. Now the uricase enzyme, what it did was basically turn on a mechanism inside our powerhouses in the mitochondria to turn down the powerhouse, to basically take something like, let's say your powerhouse is a Tesla and now it's a 1984 Yugo. So you can in a very controlled measure turn down the powerhouse so you can conserve energy and encourage particularly the liver to make fat. Right? And great for an ice age, not great for our Wednesday night in suburban America. So uric acid, when it's inside the cell, is the switch in which the mitochondria are getting turned down. So if we could perfectly go into the cell and see what uric acid levels were doing, we would be able to tell you for sure, hey, you're storing fat or not. So in all animals that have a cell, this uric acid is the mitochondrial control. And how they found this was they were looking at bears and squirrels that hibernate. So the way to see this, if you're looking at it and going, gosh, this sounds like a lot of chemistry Greek, animals that hibernate turn on uric acid inside the cell that makes the powerhouse come down to half speed. Therefore, they store fat and then they go to sleep for several months and they live off their fat. So I started looking at that. And actually, that was Rick Johnson's work out of University of Colorado and several researchers, lots of researchers now. It's very, very clear. This is the fat switch period. So I start digging and I look at it and I go, okay, well, that's interesting. So from Rick Johnson's work, we know that if uric acid on a blood test is over a 4.2, the fat switch is on. Okay. Most people think of uric acid on a test for gout, and that's like 6 and above is usually where we'll see that. And we know that uric acid causes metabolic syndrome, diabetes, hypertension, cardiovascular disease. Not correlates, doesn't sit alongside it, causes it. Because it turns on all these metabolic things. So gosh, you go look at the research and what happens to a woman when she goes through menopause?
Increase in uric acid.
Statistically always significant. And just because of it.
Just a quick question on the blood test, will it be flagged high at 4.2? No. So the doctor is not even addressing it. You're normal, nothing to worry about. And you could be eating a low sugar, low carb diet, but still have the high metabolic disease factors that are coming up as well.
Exactly. So, and it depends a little bit on how you're wired genetically. So some people have a hair trigger uric acid, other people don't. And here's the thing is uric acid's not a standard lab value. So if you go to a standard Western conventional doctor, they're not going to run it unless you come in and say, I've got gout pain in my big toe.